Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming out this morning for the State of the City address. And I want you to know, at least my part, it's all about the tuna fish. I'm Ruth Arista, an Edmonds resident and a local shop owner. And it's indeed my pleasure to be here at Mayor Dave Earling's 2016 State of the City address. Recently on a flight from Portland, I was flipping through the Alaska magazine and came across an Edmonds face, and I just had to grin. There was an Edmonds friend's twinkling brown eyes looking out from the photo. Actually, it was a local dog, and his name was Clark Kent Fine. Of course, here in a magazine, in an ad for a local tech company called Fine Solutions, there would be an Edmonds grin and a wag. Our community has, didn't like the dog at all. Our community has familiar faces all around, even in flight. On another trip following that, my wonder husband David and I saw another Edmonds neighbor during our hotel stay. That is just the way our city is. Friendly faces pop up, spend some times in the shops or walking the waterfront or in our neighborhoods, and you recognize people. You stroll a bit, you get to know new people, see old friends, and find new neighbors. That is our community's strength, our niche. A gift that all sorts of people give, each gift being unique. And our city is better because of it. That's why it comes down to the tuna fish. You see, on Tuesdays when I'm driving to work, I pass the Methodist Church. It is the Methodist Church. Good. You can tell I don't attend that one. And the Edmonds Food Bank. There, walking across the parking lot with an A-board sign in his hands, is Dr. Bob. He comes into my shop and also nudges me to show up at the wonderful Yost pool for a summer morning swim. Bob is giving his energy on Tuesday for the food bank, and so is another friend, Jerry Hamilton. She greets people and makes sure they have a card if they need it, and though my work schedule doesn't allow me to be on hand, I can do something. Food and supplies are needed, and during grocery runs, I stock up on tuna fish, and I bring it by. Bob and Jerry and lots of other great people are on hand, giving their unique gifts right there in the food bank. What are your gifts? What is your tuna fish? It depends on your favorite parts of Edmonds. Do you love seeing the waving flags lining the streets during national holidays? You can be part of the Lions Club. That's one of the things they do. Or if you have a business, you can call them, and for a few dollars each year, you'll have those flags in front of your own place. So if you love American flags, maybe this is your tuna fish. Some sunny days, Saturdays, we get to stroll the farmer's market, gathering fresh berries and giant flower bouquets. Behind the scenes are the folks, our neighbors, who voluntarily put it all together and run it. The Edmonds Museum members who mark out the booths, manage the vendors, and give up their summer weekends for this marvelous gathering place. They found their way to contribute. They found their tuna fish, and our city is the better for it. On better weather days, a bike ride into Edmonds would bring you past signs of other behind-the-scenes time given. Literally, there are signs, directional ones that clearly, easily show which way to the waterfront, the library, and the Center for the Arts. 7 or 8 years ago, Edmonds friends like Mary Kay at the bookshop and Kim from Reliable Floors and a few others began working on a business district. Many years of voluntary work and great work by the city staff and the council, the Edmonds Downtown Alliance is created in 2014. The city of Edmonds had the cool directional signs, but no room in the budget for the install. The Edmonds Downtown Alliance joins the effort, the installation happens, and these good resources have come together to finish. The Downtown Alliance is ED, exclamation point. These gifts are cooperative efforts, voluntary efforts, create signs in plain sight. These folks give their unique gifts, and a bike has a parking place, a bright green umbrella keeps people dry, and a Christmas trolley cruises the street during the holidays. That is some tuna fish. People do good things behind the scenes all the time, and it makes Edmonds marvelous. At Christmas, Santa letters go into a red North Pole mailbox near the log cabin. A person helps Santa answer these because her mom used to. And other people do it now. Some letters are sweet, some letters are heartbreaking, but every single one is answered with pen to a paper signed. Each child hears from Santa. Edmonds is full of this. It is what keeps us resilient, what fights back in the face of odd, weird, bad actions, like a broken car window or mean criminals, the strength against this gray. It keeps us helping neighbors. Even though a knucklehead honks meanly and cuts someone off in the roundabout in downtown, you can see at the same moment a person stop their walk to help someone park, smiling and waving them into the curb. Even this little dollar can be your unique gift. When spent in a local Edmonds business, 75 cents of it comes back into the local economy, providing employment for your neighbors and friends, and sales tax that helps pay for the city signs. This dollar outside, 44 cents. Inside Edmonds, 75 cents, right back here to the friends and neighbors. That's a unique gift of community strength. So choose your tuna fish. Bring food to the food bank. Sponsor Flower Basket. Join the garden club. Help the flowers in Edmonds corners look beautiful. Join a city community task force like the Highway 99 group. Become a member of Edmonds in Bloom with your big bad green thumb, or become a seal sitter on the beach. Bring your office to serve beer at the Edmonds Chamber of Commerce, Taste of Edmonds Beer Garden, like Mike Meeks and Nancy Eckram, and their fine crew. Remember Clark Kent, the soft-coated dog with the sparkling brown eyes and a heck of a tail wag? Though he's not around anymore, Clark was at the libraries like Edmonds and Snohomish on Saturdays volunteering. He and his dad, Dan, were part of Reading with Rover. A child with reading difficulty would feel more comfortable reading out loud to a dog. Clark was a great listener. He used his unique gifts to help children learn. Choose your efforts based on your own strengths, those favorite interests. Those efforts are what makes Edmonds. Choose your own tuna fish. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce Pastor Barry Crane. Barry's the senior pastor of North Sound Church, right over here on 4th Avenue.
Great job. Great. Good morning. Don't you hate it when the guy steps to the podium and doesn't have any notes and you think it's going to be short, and then he reaches in his pocket and pulls out his notes? Thank you, Mayor Dave, for the privilege of sharing here this morning. It's great to be with you all, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity. I was a little surprised when Mayor Dave called me, however, and asked a pastor to speak at a gathering like this. As you might imagine, it's a big risk to ask a pastor. We're kind of scary people. I told him that I was only planning to do a sermon and then take up a collection, so stand by. Pastors are scary people. I don't know if you remember H.L. Mencken's comments regarding the Puritans, but he said that they were worried about the fact, and he said they were haunted by the idea that somebody somewhere was happy. And sometimes we feel that pastors can be that way as well. Well, our grand opening service of North Sound Church was celebrated on February 15th, 2004. So that's about 12 years ago now. We're almost at the anniversary. And we inherited the little white church, as Ruth mentioned, just down the street, and have been blessed in that setting, and just recently was able to purchase the Edmonds Conference Center as an additional worship and ministry space. The mission of our church is very simple. It's a very simple mission, and that simple mission is to help change lives for the better. That's what we're all about. That's what we seek to do in the context of this community. From the very beginning, we've had a perspective that comes... Hi, Dave. Oh, thank you. This is Councilman Dave Teitzel with a note. It must be important news. It says, Rick Steves has just accepted the position of Washington State Chair for the Donald Trump for President Committee. Teresa, don't print that in my Edmonds News. It's not true. The prophet Jeremiah in the Hebrew Scriptures or the Christian Old Testament says these words. He says, "Seek the peace and prosperity of the city. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." And that has been a key emphasis of North Sound Church during the time that we have been able to serve in the context of Edmonds. Well, if you haven't noticed, we are in an election year. And regardless of party affiliation, I think sometimes people think that the answer to prosperity for our city comes through getting the right individual elected as our president. But I think history has shown, and as a general rule, that this is not the case. And so how do we find peace and prosperity for our city? I want to suggest this morning that we do it by looking in the mirror. What makes a prosperous city? Prosperity includes certainly a strong, vital business community. It includes, for that reason, a strong tax base. But there is so much more. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the work of Eric Kinnenberg, but he wrote a book some years ago called Heat Wave, and it was looking at two cities in Chicago. These were both cities on the south side of Chicago. They were 99% African American, both of them. They both had a similar population of elderly people, and they both had similar high crime rates and challenges within the context of their communities. But during the heat wave that killed so many people in Chicago in 1995, the numbers of mortality in these two cities was dramatically different. In Englewood, it proved to be one of the most parallel places to live during this disaster, with 33 people out of 100,000 dying during that heat wave. But Auburn Gresham, another city with the similar demographics, the death rate was only 3 per 100,000, and it actually was a better death rate than some of the wealthier suburbs in the north of Chicago. And Kleinenberg says this. He says the key difference between neighborhoods like Auburn, Gresham, and others are that are demographically similar turned out to be the sidewalks, stores, restaurants, and community organizations that bring people into contact with friends and neighbors. In Auburn, Gresham, residents walked to diners and grocery stores. They knew their neighbors. They participated in block clubs and church groups. During the heat wave, we were doing wellness checks, asking neighbors to knock on each other's doors. Ray Swanson, who has lived in Auburn Gresham for nearly 50 years, says, the presidents of block clubs usually know who's alone, who's aging, who's sick, and what we always do, and that's what we always do when it's very hot or very cold here in Chicago. Well, what does that mean for us here in Edmonds? Well, I think it suggests to us that there are some things that we need to be a great city. One of them is a strong government. And I truly believe that we have that. What a blessing to have a great city council. These guys not only spend hours on Tuesday evening, but also hours poring over their briefing materials in order to be informed about the decisions that affect our city. I have been delighted to come to know Mayor Dave and to appreciate the integrity of leadership that he has and the amazing staff that he has been able to develop at City Hall that have made this such an incredible city, a well-run city. A great city also has a strong educational institutions, and we certainly have that with the Edmonds School District, and also strong businesses. And Edmonds is increasingly becoming a vital community. The mayor asked me to comment on changes that I have seen, and I think the most visual change, the most symbolic change is coming down to Edmonds in the evening. It used to be a sleepy little town, and now one struggles at almost any time of day to find a parking spot because of the great restaurants and the great businesses that are a part of this vibrant community here in the downtown area. A great city also needs strong community organizations and churches, and as a faith community leader, I would like to take just a moment before I close to comment on faith communities. For those of us who are a part of faith communities, the benefits are fairly self-evident. That's why we voluntarily choose to be a part of a faith community. But let me offer a quick perspective for maybe some of you who maybe have not chosen to engage. How does one put a number on a faith community? How does one evaluate a faith community? How do you evaluate a marriage saved, a suicide that is averted, a family that's supported, a teenager that's taught right from wrong? How do you put a monetary value on that? Interestingly, some folks in Philadelphia, led by a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, did a study in Pennsylvania of the value of churches in the community. They did some interesting things. They added up the money generated by weddings and funerals, festivals, counseling programs, preschools, elder care. They added the salaries of staff. They even measured the circumference of trees on the church property. And they looked at 12 congregations, 10 Protestant churches, 1 Catholic church, 1 synagogue. And the grand total of the annual wealth of the community from these 12 congregations was $50,577,098 in annual economic benefits. In our unique role as faith communities, we seek to provide for the spiritual welfare of the community, but we also provide the kind of connectedness that Eric Klinenberg talked about in his book, Heat Wave. And I just want to, again, conclude by sharing with you the fact that at North Sound, many of our ministries, many of the focuses of the things that we do is around this connectedness, is of providing value to our community, regardless of whether one is a part of our faith group or not. One of the most exciting things that's being developed recently with our congregation and others in Edmonds is the community emergency response teams that are taking, in cooperation with Fire District 1, are taking into congregations this whole idea of connectedness in neighborhoods for times of need. A wonderful positive change in our community also has been the way that churches are coming together. We have 10 churches that pastors gather regularly and support one another and pray for the spiritual welfare of our city. When the mudslide happened in Oso, these 10 congregations raised from among themselves over $100,000 for relief for the folks in Oso. We are delighted to be a part of this community. I was reminded, as I closed, Mayor Dave, I was reminded of Hillary Clinton's comments years ago when she said it takes a village to provide for the welfare of children. And I want to suggest this morning that it takes all of us, government, educators, business, and indeed community organizations and faith communities to make that village. In the language of Jim Collins, we have a good city. But if we want to have a great city, we probably shouldn't wait for a solution to come from the other Washington. But we need to find it rather as each one of us looks in the mirror and invests in our neighborhoods and our networks. And then we will develop the kind of social fabric that will be strong in good times and so necessary in bad times. Thank you very much. It's my privilege to introduce to you Mayor Dave. It has been my delight to get to know him and Susan and their love for this community that we call home. I've watched Mayor Dave over this first term of office very closely. And there are three things in particular that I want to comment on very briefly. One is the fact of his professionalism in his roles. I am amazed at his executive capabilities, at how well he runs City Hall, how well he works in the context of the governance of our city and with City Council as a true professional in all of those relationships. The second thing I've noticed is the old-fashioned value of public service. Dave could be enjoying the sunshine of Arizona or California or Hawaii, but he has really given himself in this season of his life to truly serve each one of us, to see to the welfare of each one of us that call Edmonds home. And then finally, I have appreciated Dave and Susan's genuine care for the community that moves beyond professionalism, it moves beyond an office of public service, but it is involved in the lives of each one of us as he cares deeply about the welfare of our city as a whole and each one of us as individuals. Will you join me in welcoming Mayor Dave Earling?
Don't forget the mic, get the mic off.
There you are, sir.
I want to be careful. I should have given Barry about 30 minutes, especially at the end when he was saying nice things about me. Well, good morning and welcome, and I'm just delighted to have such a full house this morning and so many people here that I see from the community, from the area, and also from the staff. It's great to gather us together once a year and just talk about what's gone on in our city and what more we need to think about doing. If you would, I'd like to give both Ruth and Barry another round of applause for their fine message. I was going to introduce a whole bunch of people today, but I don't think I will. But I am going to introduce someone who likes to keep quiet in my life. Doesn't like so much being in the public eye. But by gum, today I'm going to have her be in the public eye. And Susan, I know you're here. If you would stand up, and I think she's in the back, would you please recognize her? I'd also like to highlight that we've added some new city council members this last year. Neil Tibbett and Dave Teitzel won election in November. Additionally, Mike Nelson and Tom Massaros, who were both appointed since the last municipal election, were elected. And of course, Diane Bucksness, who was on the council, was reelected. We have two that weren't standing for election, but their time is coming here in a couple of years. And that's Adrian Fraley-Manias and Christiana Johnson. I know we have several of them here today. Would you please stand and let us recognize you? As you can imagine, I have the opportunity to hear several state of speeches every year. Not only at the federal level, but the state level and also locally. And they all have their own flavor. Some are long and full of messages, facts, sometimes humorous, sometimes full of fairly worrisome information too. Some are very uplifting, and some not so much. But many of them select a theme for a speech. I've never done that before, but what I'd like to do this morning is have you, when you leave, go out with one very clear message in your heads, and this is the theme. We ain't Edmonds anymore, folks, and you all need to remember that. We have really evolved, I think, in a very positive way in the last 10 or 20 years. When I first came to Edmonds, it was in the late 70s, and I think we had a well-earned reputation at that time as Edmonds. Frankly, not a lot was going on. We had a nice, clean suburb of Seattle, attractive enough with our seaside setting, but in truth, Not much was happening here in any age group, be they young or be they old. Kids and adults often went to other places when dining, for amusement, shopping, and any kind of fun before or after 6 o'clock, or on weekends. Symptomatic of that was when I found out that the Chamber of Commerce, our esteemed Edmonds Chamber of Commerce, didn't meet during the summer because it was too hot. I knew I was in an odd place at that time. But in the late 80s and into the 90s, the attitude began to shift here in town, and certainly the Chamber has been a leader in that regard. I think there may be still some remnants of it's a Edmonds kind of day, but it really has very little traction in our community anymore. Remember, though, that boring isn't always so bad. After all, we want to maintain the small town ambiance we value and is one of the baselines for success in the city of Edmonds. Let me, though, give you a couple of anecdotal observations which makes me understand things are, in fact, shifting. If you remember, 5 or 6 years ago, after 6 o'clock, we had a fairly quiet town. In fact, it was boring as hell. But look at the transformation that's happened in the last several years. It's really amazing to see, with the stunning variety and quality of restaurants downtown, or at the waterfront, the ECA, the Edmonds Theater, where we are this morning. We have yogurt shops, we have gelato shops, we have our parks. Suddenly, we are able to use the words for the downtown and business community as vibrant and alive. You maybe noticed some other changes. That's not the one I wanted. You may have noticed that we now have in downtown Edmonds a lot of baby carriages, a lot of strollers around town. I just find that to be fascinating and terribly encouraging. Or if you have been around downtown, we notice that there are a number of children in all ages that are here much more frequently. Two things I'd like to call to your attention are the age demographics, which are shifting a bit, and parents now have more reason to come downtown with their children. It's a safe and fun place to be. Tell me, folks, does that look like Edmonds? Does this look like Edmonds? Does this look like Edmonds? I don't think so. And I can't tell you how many times over the last couple of years I've had parents in their late 50s and early 60s recount to me that their children, now in their 20s and 30s, used to go to Ballard, used to go to downtown Seattle, used to go to Kirkland for a night on the town. Now they love staying here in Edmonds so they don't have to drive far, and it is a very safe place. One last observation. We are becoming a daytime destination for more and more people as our reputation grows as a friendly place to be, shopping, restaurants, outdoor activities, and the arts. A destination for people to come for an afternoon or an evening to get away from the frantic pace of larger metropolitan areas and savor the small town experience. In the middle of all of the regional growth and expansion, the council and I pledge to keep that small town getaway feel we all enjoy and are committed to. Now let's get to a few factual and valuable traditional state of messages. How about a little financial and economic information? Bottom line, we have had a fabulous year in revenue this past year. With the improving economy, with some of the strategic decisions, frankly, we've made as a city, including deep budget cuts back in 2011, our sales tax, property tax, real estate, excise tax revenues are up, and they're up dramatically. Just have a look at this. The important line, whoops, is right up here. Sales tax, we had another $901,000 in increased sales tax this last year. And that's 2015 over 2014. 2014, frankly, was a fabulous year, but we've had this much improvement. Look here, too. This shows some of the same information. The one I'd really like to spotlight here, just for purposes of demonstration, is the retail automotive numbers that we have. I have people oftentimes say, oh my gosh, we don't need any more used car lots, we don't need any new car dealerships. Hey folks, I should be out recruiting cars. It's really, it's a tremendous advantage for our community. But this again gives you an idea of the sort of sales tax that we've generated and where the areas they come from. And by the way, we can get you this information if any of you are interested in seeing it. Also, I'd like to highlight the fact that the real estate market here has been very good for the community. Have a look at this. Property values have been going up, and so that does increase the sales tax, or excuse me, the real estate property taxes that we do collect. Look at the far right-hand side, 2015 over 2014. We're generating $570,000 in additional revenue from that source. That means our property values are coming back. In fact, it's a very strong market. Here's another example. Take a look at this. Every time you sell your house or buy a house, there is a real estate excise tax that's collected. Look at that number in the far right-hand side. Over $800,000 in 1 year in increase. That's a powerful number. And it also highlights the fact that Edmonds has become an even more desirable place to live. After all, we are near Seattle, we are near Everett, we are near the east side, and South Snohomish County, frankly, is flourishing. Mix that with a gorgeous setting, great schools, and an arts and culture community, and our small town setting all add to the desirability of Edmonds, thus increasing our real estate values, but also increasing our lifestyle. Of course, we also have dramatic revenue. While we have the dramatic revenue increases, we also have dramatic expenses increase also. You know, I know that I've talked about this before. We have a highly trained and very qualified staff here working for the city, but they do get pay increases. And they also like to work here and have worked here for a long time, which means sometimes they have earned a fair amount of money, but it is fair, and we need to acknowledge that this high quality staff brings us a great benefit, and it truly does. I work with professionals every day. We cut staff pretty dramatically back in 2010, 2011, kind of a follow-on of the recession that we had gone through. This year, though, because of the improved economy, we have in fact added a few new staff members to better serve you, the public. This year's salary and benefits, just to put it out front, for 219 employees that we have, will be about $24 million. They've earned every penny of it, folks. In addition to that expense, I'll show you a little bit later about the sort of improvements that we've made and how we are spending some of the money. A couple of things I want to point out, though, that are still kind of a mystery to me. The Fire District 1, as you know, may not know, they're in the middle of their negotiations with their labor union again. We still don't know what our new number would be. They're actually in intense negotiation now. In fact, they've made it to arbitration. So we don't know what that's going to be. It's an unknown, but hopefully we'll know before too terribly long. The other thing I wanted to mention is I was in Olympia, well, actually 3 times in 6 days here a couple of weeks ago. I heard a really interesting and I think valuable presentation by the director of the Office of Financial Management. His first message was the good news. Our tax base has moved higher, the income is better. The bad news is it's not nearly as high as we thought it would be. That mixed in with what's coming in 2017 legislative session, when they'll actually take another serious attempt at solving the McCleary decision, the education decision. That gives me great cause. He was very worried about that and the kind of impact it might have, not only at the state, but we do get some funds from the state, and that would begin to sweep away some of the improvements that we've made. So I usually name my budget year just a bit from conservative to cautious to guardedly optimistic. Well, we're in the middle of what I called a guardedly optimistic year. I'm going to be back, I think, to cautious when we start looking at 2017. It's just a reality you've got to try and think ahead of, and we're trying to do that. Okay, let's quickly run through some of our major successes, projects, and challenges in 2015 and coming in 2016. How many of you, without being sick, have had a chance to go up to Swedish Hospital? You need to go up and have a look at them. When Swedish came into town, they gave us a list of what they were going to do, and they're walking their talk, folks. They've added the 77,000 square foot, I call it a community center, but it also has a brand new emergency facility area. It's fabulous. They've also, 2 years ago, opened their cancer center. They built a parking garage. They're walking their talk, and they've added great value, health-wise and other ways, to the community. How about this one? I thought that big box was never going to get full, but I'm terribly glad that Winco is there. How many of you have been to the Winco Foods place? It's astounding. You may want to find out why the parking lot is always full. It's because there's tons of people in there. Yes, they do have good prices, and I need to disclose that. But it's an amazing dynamic. You need to go have a look at it so you'll understand the value that that particular store brings to the community. With the better economy that we're in, we've also had increased construction in our community. One of the real valuable pieces that I see under construction now is down on 2nd Avenue, just in back of the post office. This will be 43 new units. This will be, 14,000 square feet of commercial space. When they complete this project at some point in the future, they will also add another 22 units in the current post office site and provide more commercial space. It's going to be a fabulous facility and one that will add great value to our community. We've also had kind of an explosion of, for us, new single-family construction. Back in 2012, we had a grand total of 23 new housing starts. 23 in a city of 40,000. Not very much, folks. Last year we had over 40. This year I think we're looking at 53 or 56 new housing starts in the community. So we still have small pieces of developable land that builders are coming in to do work on. Our second floor, the development services engineering area, has just been terribly busy for the last couple of years. Pretty exciting stuff for them. One of the things that's a challenge for us and we need to think about is Highway 99. We are in the process of doing what's called a sub-area plan. We actually had the first presentation of the consultant this last Tuesday, and you talk about spectacular vision they think that they can create. Stop and think about it. If you come up through Shoreline, it's pretty well themed now so that it feels sort of cohesive. We need to take steps to do that here in our community. We have fabulous car dealerships there. The International District is flourishing. And of course, at the north end, we've got the Swedish Hospital. So we've got anchors all the way through there, but we need to be able to develop some consistency, and that's what bringing in this consultant will do for us, hopefully. I also want to mention another challenge that we're in the middle of, and that has to do with the at-grade crossings. Many of you know that we formed a task force here last fall to take a hard look with the principal players, BNSF, the Port, City of Edmonds, the state. I've all put together about $700,000 for the analysis that's currently going on to begin to address how we can make a more safe place for ferries, for trains, people, buses, cars. We've got to figure that out. And the results of this work should come forward in in fall of this year. This gives you another look at it. You can just see what the problem is here. We have the ferry. We have the train. It's a freight train, so it's probably 7 minutes going through. And then you can see on your far left the lineup of cars. We have to solve the problem, and that's what we hope we'll be able to at least find out what the potential answer is with the alternatives analysis that we're doing. We've also got, I think, another great success coming this year. For years, we have people walking through town who are visiting our town, or the people that live here, and they say, "Where's the public restroom?" A little bit of a hum in the audience, but it's been a problem. The business owners get frustrated with all of the people coming in asking for a restroom. Well, folks, for this next year, by the end of the year, we hope to have in place a public restroom. It will be at the south end of City Hall in a parking lot there. We have an early design of the building, and I'd like to share it with you this morning. Well, maybe not. But this does, I think, give you a bit better idea. Conceptual, it's certainly not necessarily what it will look like. But that's a high priority for me and a high priority for the staff, that we can provide a facility like this for the community. You know, one of the things that we all need to celebrate, and we can celebrate it this morning, is last Tuesday, 2 days ago, in the afternoon, there was a recording made at the Snohomish County Courthouse. We now own the Civic Field. And you need to give yourself a round of applause. This is 8 acres of open space. We will spend the next year creatively looking at how we can best utilize that for the community. And I view it, I've used the word open space, it has to have that element in it for me. That's what this is all about. How many cities do you think have 8 acres in the heart of downtown? Not many, folks. This was a great decision that we made. And thanks to the cooperative work with the school district and the city council, we were actually able to close the transaction. Another major piece that we're working on, not quite as sexy as Civic Field, but if you've been out on Highway 99 in the area of 228, we in this community need to create more east-west corridors because we need to move people efficiently in and out of our community. We're doing a cooperative project with Mount Lake Terrace, and it will provide another east-west connector, and it will come out in Mount Lake Terrace at around their parking facility there, where Community Transit has their facility. If you've ever been across 220th as an example, another east-west corridor, it can be miserable depending on the time of day trying to get through that area. Anyway, this should be finished, I think, if I'm right about this, Rob and Phil, in the next couple of months, as I understand it. Another project we'll be taking on this year is the intersection of 76th and 212th. If you're not familiar with the area, we have over in this area is the high school, Burger King, and I think maybe that helps you put yourself where that spot is. It'll be a great improvement. We have terrible congestion there at certain times during the day, and we need to free up the movement of people in that area. Also, while we're talking about 76th and 212th, if you've had a chance to drive by just north of the Burger King, there is a new assisted living center been built there. If you haven't seen it and you think you know it from just driving by, you don't. Because if you go back on the property, you'll see it is enormously expansive. and it's a great addition to our community. If you go a couple of blocks to the east, you'll run into another new construction project. It's a memory care center that's going to go in just across from the Public Works site. Again, another tremendous improvement for our community. Perhaps a smaller improvement, we should mention though that we have put up a Facebook page this year. It's changed daily with the different departments that want to get new information out to the public. You need to get used to checking in there every once in a while. Also, we've made improvements on our website. If you haven't gone to the City of Edmonds website, you need to do that because you can find out a great deal of information about the city just by spending a little bit of time there. The council and I, just a couple of months ago, created a diversity commission. When I was doorbelling 4 years ago and did the 7,000 houses around the city, I got to tell you, I was just stunned at the changes that have come in the diverse population that have changed since I was on the council about 1,000 years ago. And there was really a team effort by the council and I to put together this diversity commission. They've been working now for a couple of months. They have their work plan in place and they're beginning to move forward. Another terrific success story, although not the city's, is Salish Crossing. Have you been by there just the last couple of days? They now have the hood off of that enormous thing that was out on the corner. It's the portico from the former Edmonds High School, which was just up the street here where the ECA is now. The developer there bought this thing, refurbished it, and put it back out. There are, and it's unveiled now, you should just drive by and see what it looks like. We have tremendous businesses going in there. We also have the Cascadia Art Museum. If you haven't been, how many of you been to that? You need to treat yourself. It's fabulous. We will gain a Northwest and West Coast reputation from this very positive addition to our arts community. Go have a look at it. The last improvement I just want to mention is one that we have to wait for a little warmer weather for. We've completed the spray pad, which will be part of the city park. And now adults can go to this too, as I understand it. So you can go down, put on your swimsuits and run through it. But of course it is really for the kids. And I'm so excited to see this. And it will be, again, another amenity that enriches the Edmonds experience. I want to take just a minute now, as I've done the last couple of years, to mention one of our staff members. And this person has no idea that I'm going to introduce them today. So I'm going to embarrass the hell out of one of you. How many staff members do we have here? I'll be sure and embarrass each of you in the coming years. This particular person, just to give you an idea, when he was hired by the City of Edmonds, he was earning $602 a month. Does that tell you it may have been a while back? This person has been with the City of Edmonds for 34 years. He is a person that works in the parks area. He's now the manager of the personnel that keep our parks up. He's a friendly guy. If you ever make a call to him, you'll find this really warm, engaging person. And I hope I'm embarrassing the hell out of you. Rich Lindsay, would you please stand up and let us... You 43 years? Oh hell, what's 10 years? It probably seems like 53 to him. You may have wondered why his daughter is here this morning. I clued her in. And we're actually going to show some of her photos here just in a few minutes. Okay, folks, we got one last topic we need to spend a little time on this morning, and this is serious stuff. After all, most of our upbeat news this morning, I need to let you know, going out the door, that there's some things that you need to begin thinking about. The reality of the rapidly changing demographics in our state, in the region, our county, and the city needs to get our attention on a number of fronts. One of the things we pride ourselves here in this community is that it is a very livable community. Starting back in 1890, I'm sure they were worried about keeping the streets clean and all the rest of it too. But as we've grown over time, one of the mainstays of what we've done with this community is make it feel livable and vibrant. In these changing times, I need to give you some sort of baseline information that I've learned here in the last few months. We currently have a population in the state of Washington of about 7 million people. By 2040, we are projected to have over 9 million people in the state of Washington. The Regional Council, the Puget Sound Regional Council, PSRC, forecasts that our region is expected to grow from about 3,800,000 to over 5 million in the next several years. 2035, I think, is what that projection is to. The county is expected to grow in that period of time from 750,000 to over 970,000 people. Little old Edmonds, which is, by the way, the third largest city in the county, is projected to grow by 2035 in the following way. Remember, though, that we have already said that Edmonds is pretty well built out, but yet these are the predictions that PSRC is giving us to think about. By 2035, projected, we'd have another 5,500 people moving in with us here. We would be creating about another 1,000 jobs. The one that I still can't quite get my head wrapped around is another 2,500 housing units by 2035. Keep in mind that 2035 is still a ways out, but we've got to start thinking about it, got to start planning how we're going to anticipate this sort of change going on in our community. Where are we going to put all of these people in the housing facilities that PSRC projects? And again, I would remind you that this is projected for a while out, but it's still change that we need to think about. I know many of us will think, well, we just won't let that happen. That's a tradition here in town, by the way. We're just going to stop the changes. The reality is we won't be able to build a fence around Edmonds similar to the suggested fence between Mexico and the United States. Or we understand the rumored effort of Canada wanting a fence between the U.S. and Canada to keep the Donald Trump supporters out of our country, out of their country. I had to make one political jab here. We have to find, though, pragmatic solutions that make sense and at the same time improve our community. We're going to have creative solutions for the changes that are going to be coming, again, over a period of time, but we need to start thinking about that. What and where can we realistically begin to anticipate these growing changes, even if the projections are off by 10 or 20%? Where and how can we deal with those changes? Certainly, some of those are going to happen in the downtown area. It's inevitable. But we need to think differently than just what's going to happen to downtown, because we have these other very important communities scattered within our city. You remember several slides back, we talked about Highway 99. To create more retail space, to create more housing units, to create more jobs, this is an area that we really need to focus on. It's an important part of our community, and we too often think, oh, it's just the bowl, it's just the bowl. I've got neighborhoods all over this community that I think are equally important. The sub-area plan that we're going through now will make a lot of suggested changes, which is great. We get to the end of the year, that plan is done. And I should tell you, as part of the transportation package that was passed by the legislature last year, there's a $10 million amount for improving Highway 99. The only problem is in the schedule, and they've got to figure out how to pay for these over 16 years. We're not supposed to get to the money for additional 6 years. So one of the efforts that we're going to try and do, and have been working with our state legislators with, and the reason I was in Olympia 3 times in 6 days, is to get them to pull some of that money forward so that when we get to the end of the planning time, we can begin to use some of that money to continue the improvement. How deadly would it be to finish this plan, wait for 6 years to begin receiving the money, which, by the way, we couldn't spend $10 million in 1 year, but we'd probably have to do a new plan by then. So it's kind of a common sense approach, and our legislators are trying to help, but it truly will be a challenge. Other places that we could do some of this improvements to bring in more housing, to bring in more jobs and a little more retail would be areas like Westgate, would be areas like Five Corners, also Perrinville, also Firdale Village. We need to really take a look at each of those neighborhoods and see how we can move our community forward utilizing them. I think that this is the place to start. Some of it downtown, Highway 99, Westgate, Five Corners, Perrinville, Firdale Village. Those are the areas that we can think about how it is we want to do some of those improvements to bring in the numbers that the Puget Sound Regional Council is projecting for us. There's 3 more large issues I need to have you think about. Not today so much, but we need to get these on our radar screen. With the growth that's coming, there will be other kinds of changes that happen in our community. Here's 3 areas that I need to have you think about. First one is affordable housing. Highway 99, some of those other communities that I've mentioned, is an area that our consultants the other night said this is probably a great place to be thinking about putting some of those improvements over time. The other one we've got to think about is the whole idea of homelessness, the whole idea of the mental illness crisis we've got going on, and substance abuse. We can't continue the fine tradition of arresting people, putting them in jail for a day or 2, and turning them back out in the street again. There's a number of cities, obviously throughout the West Coast, but especially here in South Snohomish County, we're finally starting to pull together groups of people to talk about this with some of the other cities. This isn't something we're going to solve by ourselves, but we're going to have conversations about how we can work together to begin to address some of these problems. The third one I want you to think about is the sea rise. You know, sometimes, and I'm a moderate Republican, there's 4 of us left in the state. But, you know, those of us who can't deal with the fact that there is climate change, that there will have to be changes made, this is an issue in front of Edmonds. We have a great seaside setting here. How is it that we're going to anticipate the change that we may have to make to address higher tide or higher sea levels? That's an important thing that we're just going to have to take on. These 3 are all big issues again, but will take longer time for discussion than this morning. You know, I hope by the fact that we've gone through the last, 25 minutes or so, talking about the changes we've seen in Edmonds, to see the improvements we've made in Edmonds, the better financial news that we have in Edmonds, I hope you can truly walk out and say, this ain't Deadman's anymore, folks. We are an alive and vital community that needs to be sure that we take care of ourselves. So in summary, we've heard great remarks from Ruth, and we've heard great remarks from Barry. I hope that you've been able to establish in your minds that we ain't Deadman's anymore. I've tried to give you some information on what I see as a strong and improving financial position, but we have some worrisome pieces too that we need to think about. I've also given you a quick review of the successful projects and the challenges that we still have facing us in our community. I've tried to give you a snapshot of what the state, region, county, and community will face in the coming years as we deal with the reality of change. In closing, though, let me remind you of what I believe we as a community will continue to seek and maintain. First of all, it's the sense of community that Edmonds has. Edmonds has the sense of community, has always had the sense of community. In fact, I believe it's the core strength of our community. We need to be sure that the livability that we're experiencing now will continue on for the next generation, so that our young man on the right-hand side there has the same shared experience that we have now in our community. We all need to get off our rear ends and move. We all need to make sure that we're healthy. We need to exercise. You see people out walking all the time here in our town. It's a great message that you send to the other community members as they come through and they see you riding a bike, or you're maybe even at the gym, or you got your yoga class going. We need to take better care of ourselves, and I think that that's really a coming need for our community. I love this slide. Walkability. We need to have walkable neighborhoods. Downtown, that's our specialty. We can walk any place. It's very comfortable. It's safe to be at almost any time of the day. But we can do the same thing in other neighborhoods in the community. Develop those walkability pieces as we can have on Highway 99, at Westgate, Five Corners, and so on. We need to start thinking about transportation differently too. With that growth coming, how are we going to move around the region? We have the commuter trains that take people to work in Seattle and bring them home in the evening. Community transit has a fabulous bus network in our community. The Swift line that runs on Highway 99, by far the highest ridership of their work. And at the same time, you need to think about all of those peoples on that transit. If they weren't there, they'd be on where? They'd be in a car. And the congestion would be even worse. So they're a great amenity. And then by 2023, still a ways away, we will have the light rail line coming into Linwood. And that's why developing the east-west corridors that I mentioned to you is so terribly important now. Moving people to those places where the mass transit can take place. It's an important issue that we need to sometimes redefine what we do. Getting back to home, though, the heart of our community, besides all we've talked about, really is the park system. Carrie Height is building her empire. Let's face it. You know, the purchase of Civic Field didn't get by Carrie. She understood that we were doing it. In fact, she did a great job in helping facilitate that purchase. Some we don't talk about very much. We have wildlife here in our community. At the waterfront, at the marsh, our parks, the streams. We need to think about that and how we take better care of our natural resources like that. Of course, the waterfront is the real prize. We need to get to the water. We need to have the views. We need to get to the beaches. That's part of what really drives our community. Let me think. One other thing. Oh, all of these pieces really give us the unique opportunity to remain a community many other cities, frankly, would like to emulate. We are a prize here, folks. And I know that sounds corny, but it's the truth. I know that that is your goal, and I know that it is also my goal. We need to make sure we treasure this community and keep working to enhance it. In closing, I just simply need to let you know once again what a distinct honor it is to represent your city as mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. That concludes our State of the City address, and really appreciate everybody's attendance this morning on the Thursday. Have a great day.